one of the major things that students seem to struggle with is reading effectively. They know how to read, but they're not getting the most out of the reading, and they're struggling to comprehend. I'm sure that you would all agree if I was to ask you if you've ever read something, gotten to the end of the reading and not really understood it and feel like you have to read it again. So hopefully I'm going to take you through a strategy that really helps me. And so how can it help you? This strategy is really great for maintaining your focus during reading. It helps to increase your comprehension so you don't get to the end of the article and not really understand what it is that you've read. It will increase your comprehension so you don't have to do as much rereading. And it's really great for learning new concepts, particularly academic reading of textbooks or journal articles. So it's a jigsaw analogy, and there's 4 pieces to the puzzle. The first piece of the puzzle is to read the title and the author of the reading that you're going to undertake. The next step is to read the introduction and the conclusion. So you read just the introduction and then skip to the back and read the conclusion. If it's a journal article that you're reading, there may not be an introduction and conclusion, but something called an abstract, which you usually find at the beginning of the journal article, and it's a summary of the journal article. So if you're reading a journal, read the abstract. If you're reading a textbook, read the introduction and conclusion. And if you're reading a section of a chapter, so just one page or something like that, then rather than read an introduction and conclusion, you can read the introductory paragraph, so the first paragraph, and then the concluding paragraph, the last paragraph. The next step is to read just the first sentence of each paragraph, and this is probably the trickiest step to get used to. So you read just the first sentence, and this is the topic sentence of each paragraph. And the topic sentence gives us an idea of what the paragraph's going to be about. By reading all the topic sentences, we get a really great overview of the article, and it gives us some scaffolding for when we read the whole article. The final step is to reread the whole article. We've got a really good overview of the article, who wrote it, what it's going to be about. We know what the introduction and conclusion is, so we know what the big picture of the article is. So then when we get into the nitty details of the article, we know exactly where it fits in the whole picture. And when you do these 4 things together, it can really increase your comprehension. I found that it sped up the time that I spent reading. Even though I had to spend a little extra time at the beginning, it really saved me a lot of time in the long run. So let's walk through exactly how it would work. I'm going to give you an example of a reading that we're working on in my biology class at the moment, and it's a reading on biofilms. The very first thing I would do is have a look at the title and the author. So the author in this case is Montana State University. The individual authors haven't been given. The title of the article is Biofilm Basics. So step 2, introduction and conclusion. The next step is to locate the introduction and read it. Normally your introduction will be around maybe 3 to 7 paragraphs in length. So locate that and read through, and this is the introduction for the article that I'm looking at. And then I would skip right to the back of the article and find the conclusion and have a read through that as well. The next step is to read just the first sentence of each paragraph. And during this time, I would also orientate myself with any pictures or graphs that are in the article. So I'd have a look at the picture. On this page, this is right at the beginning, and then read just the first sentence describing what this image is about. And then I would follow through the article just reading the first sentence. This can be really difficult to get used to. It'll take a bit of practice. You'll find yourself wanting to continue to read, but it's important to just read the first sentence and stop at that. So in this instance, I'm highlighting the sentences that I would be reading. And you just continue through the article, reading only the first sentence of each paragraph. In this article, we've now gone on to a new section, so I'd also read the headings, and again, just the first sentences, and then have a look at the picture on the page, and down here we can see, here's the information that tells us what the picture is about, and so I would read just the first sentence of that, and continue through the reading, just reading the first sentences and headings. Right down the bottom of this page it says click to see table 1.1. At this point I would have a quick look at that table. Often I find during readings, this one isn't too bad, but often in textbooks it'll say refer to figure 1.3 and you'll be on page 5, and figure 1.3 will be on page 7. So when you're doing this, if you can have a look at the pictures and what the title is, then later when you read through the whole article and it says refer to figure 1.3, you know what figure 1.3 is already, and you don't have to do as much flicking through the book. So just continuing reading just the headings, orientating yourself with the pictures and tables, and figures and just reading the first sentences only. So now we've gotten right to the end of the article. We've read all of the first sentences of each paragraph, we've read the introduction and conclusion, and we have a really great idea of what the article's about. We have the big picture. We know where it's coming from, where it's going to, and the steps in between. Now we can reread the whole article, and it's going to really speed up our comprehension. I find that doing the steps beforehand when you reread the article, if you do get distracted during reading and something shifts your focus, then it's easier to find where you were up to because you were familiar with those first sentences of each paragraph. The other thing that I find it's really helpful with is sometimes you get into an article and you get really lost in the details. It gets really complicated and you're starting to get confused, or you're starting to feel like you've been reading for a long time, and then you come along another sentence that you've already read and your brain goes, oh, I know this already. And so it helps to maintain your focus. It helps you to understand what you're reading. So give it a try. I find it so useful. Another thing that I would recommend during reading is if you come along any new terms, then I like to have some index cards with lines on them. I cut them in half and I have a pile sitting next to me. Or you could use some sticky notes. And so I just keep them handy. And so when I'm reading, if I come across any new term that I'm not sure of, I may have heard it before, but I don't really remember the definition, or I haven't heard it before and I'm unfamiliar with it, then I would write that term down. And so let's have a look at an example of this. So in the reading that we just examined about biofilms, biofilm may be a new term for you, and so I would write that term down. And then in this article, there's actually quite a good definition of what a biofilm is. So I've highlighted here the sections that I would use to make up my definition. But if the article doesn't provide you with a definition, then have a dictionary handy and look it up. You can use an app on your phone or a physical dictionary. Look up the word and find out what it means. If you don't really understand a word, there's no point in continuing reading. You can't make the context of what the reading is about if you don't understand what the words are that they're giving you, all the terms. Sometimes we have a guess at what a term means because we've seen a similar term, and if you guess wrong, then you can have a pretty big misconception at the end of the reading and think you understand something but not really know. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of making sure that you understand what you're reading. It takes a little extra time, but it really does help. So in this case, we don't need to go to the dictionary. They've given us a pretty good overview and definition of what a biofilm is. So I've summarised there the sentences that I was given into my own words and used the terms that they're using and given myself a definition. So now anytime biofilm comes up, I have a definition, and if I forget, I can refer back to it. Finally, I like to talk about taking notes. Lots of students take notes while reading, and so how can you take notes in the most effective way? And when and how to take notes is really important. A lot of people will take notes during reading, and I used to do this, and I find that it's really ineffective to take notes during reading. The reasons that I think it's ineffective is that if you take notes during reading, it's distracting from the process of reading, and also when you take notes during reading, you tend to write a lot more notes and do more copying of exactly what's written there, rather than the point of taking notes is to summarise the knowledge into your own words. If you're just regurgitating what's in the textbook, you might as well just read the textbook or the article again. So I would recommend not taking notes during reading. The only notes I would take during reading is writing terms that I'm unfamiliar with and checking on the definition. So let's look in detail when to take notes. I would wait 5, maybe 10 minutes after I finish the reading and then go back and take the notes. It's fine to refer to the article or chapter that you're reading after you've read it to take notes if you want to refer back to something just to clarify for writing your notes, but definitely don't do it while you're reading. And so the second thing is how to take notes. I mean, how would you take the notes? So I've got a couple of different strategies that I use, and I think it's important to know why you're taking notes. Is it to study for a particular exam? Are you trying to answer an assignment question? What's the goal of taking the notes? So have that in your mind. What are you trying to learn about, or what's the question that you're trying to find out? And then have a strategy for taking notes. So here are 3 strategies that I've used. I find them all effective, and so pick a strategy that works for you or works for the particular this particular goal that you have. Is it an assignment you're doing? Are you studying for an exam? Pick something that's going to work for you. So starting over here on the right hand side, I've got the lined paper there, and this is a Cornell notes taking system, and I'm sure many of you will be familiar with it already. So basically with the Cornell note taking system, you draw a narrow column on the left hand side, you have a large column on the right hand side, and then you have the page ruled off at the bottom. And so that big large section on the right hand side is where you take all your notes. And then on the left hand side you can jot down any questions you may have, any terms that are unfamiliar, anything you think that you need to go back and look at again. It's a little column there for you to jot down anything that you want to revisit or question. And then right down the bottom, once you've taken your big notes on the right hand side, you would summarise that then into about 2 or 3 sentences. So the bottom section is to summarise your big notes. So get your big notes down and then summarise it in the small section there. On the left hand side here, this is a note-taking strategy that I was introduced to this year, and I found it really helpful. And so this one is one that I would use when I'm researching an article that I want to talk about in a report or an assignment. And so basically how it works is you've got the main idea. So you read the article, what was the main idea of the article, what was it about? And then you can list the sub-ideas. And then right at the bottom, similarities and differences. So this one's really useful for an assignment. If you've got 2 different authors and you're comparing the article that you've just read through with another article, what's similar and different about what the other article is or what you already know. Or they may be talking about a few different points in the article and you could compare the similarities and differences there. But I find that one really helpful for assignment writing, reports and essays. And then finally at the bottom is a KWL, and this one would probably be very effective if you were doing an assignment as well. So KWL stands for what I know, what do I want to know, and then what I learnt. So before I started the reading, I would write down what I already know about the topic that I'm trying to find out more about by undertaking the reading. And then before reading again, I would write down what do I want to know, what am I trying to find out by doing this reading. And then finally my notes would be what did I learn. So that can be a really good summary, and that can be a tool that you use in your planning. What do I want to know? That could be your 2 minutes planning. What do I want to know from this article? So I hope that helps you, and I'm sure that you'll try out some of these strategies and it will increase your success with studying and maximise your time. Thank you.